Alright, hello and welcome back. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and we're going over Android App Inventor 2 as part of the Rankin Technical College Summer Adventure Academy series. And in the last lecture, I went through and I created this all-American application. And we're going to see if we can get it up and running. I've had some problems with my machine this morning. Had to run through some updates and the like, but let's see if we can get this to work. So, connect, reset my connection, connect, and try to open up the emulator. Now this is what happened last time. It said starting the emulator. This might take a minute or two. There we go. That's much better than what we had before. I started to think about this last night, and I realized that at least it's possible that this first application we went through was not difficult. Okay, I think everyone would agree with that. That what we did wasn't very hard. We put 3 buttons on a screen, and we put a line or so of code for each button that just turned our screen the color that was on the name of the button. So if I click the red button, the screen would turn red. If I click the white button, the screen would turn white. If I click the blue button, the screen would turn blue. All right, and again, hopefully at least that's pretty self-explanatory as far as what's happening. All right, this should be coming up. There we go. So red, white, blue. Now again, that's pretty self-evident. Let's minimize this. And let's go to the blocks editor. So this is what we had right here. All right, when we click the red button, set the screen background color to red. When we click the white button, set the screen's background color to white. When we click the blue button, set the screen's background color to blue. And like I said, hopefully at least, you found that pretty self-evident as far as what was happening in there. All right, but as I mentioned, I started to think last night that maybe I was going through this a little too fast. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to come in and do a projects, start new project, and I'm just going to call this AA. All right, All American AAA, not American Automobile Association, All American App. And I'm going to click OK. And there I have it. Because I started to think that maybe I was running through some of this too quickly. Now, as we go through this particular series of videos, we're going to go through many of the controls that are on here, but not all of them. We'll go through the button, the image, the label, the text box, the web viewer. We'll go into layouts and we'll look at a horizontal arrangement, probably a vertical arrangement. We'll go into media and we'll talk a little bit about sound and text-to-speech. We'll go into drawing and animation. We'll talk about the ball and the canvas and the image sprite. We'll at least probably mention the sensors. Social, we might look at some of the stuff that's in here. We may not. Storage, that allows you to actually work with a database that's built into this. Connectivity, notice that you can have something happen when you start. Basically, when you start your app, you can hook up to Bluetooth. It's kind of neat. They have where you can set up to work with Lego Mindstorms. Experimental, I don't think there's Firebase. I've never done anything with that. An extension, which I've never done anything with either. But we've kind of looked at the palette. You know that every time, for instance, I'm going to kind of write the same app that I did before, but put a little twist on it. In other words, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab a label and I'm going to just throw it in there. And then I'm going to grab 3 buttons. 1, 2, 3 buttons. Now you'll notice that as I do this and as I add things from my user interface to my viewer, they also get added to my components. When you add things, that's the time to really go and rename them. So notice that at the bottom here I can click rename. You can call them whatever you want. If it's a label, I'm going to call this here label color. And if you don't understand why I'm calling it that, just bear with me for a second. And you see how it changes. button, I'm going to rename that, and we'll call that button red. The second one we'll call button white. And the last one we'll call button blue. I think that's kind of how we did it last time. All right. This is also the time for us to come in here and change the text on these buttons. Now for the label, we actually don't need any text in here whatsoever. So I'm going to leave all my text off. But I'm going to do a couple of other things. So it disappears, but it is still there. But with that label highlighted, I'm going to do a couple things just so we know it's there. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and change the background color so I can see it. And I'm just going to set it to, I don't know, something I'm not using right now. Let's make it pink. All right, and you say, well, there's nothing there. You'll see it in just a moment. Now, I want to set basically the width of this so that it goes and it stretches across the whole length of my screen here. So I'm going to go to width, and I'm going to say fill parent and click OK. And now you can see what's happened here. Still isn't pink. I'm not sure exactly why, but I'm not worried about that. It should be pink when I run it. But I'm going to also go to height, and I'm going to say that I want the height of that, let's say, to be 25 pixels. All right, now it's pink, and now we can see it. All right, I'm going to do the same kind of thing for my buttons. This one will say on it, we will put text on it, so we'll put red. And we'll also come in and we'll say that we want, show you a little trick here, not that it's that big a thing. But we'll say red, and let's say that for the width, for the percentage, let's just say we want it to take up about a third of the screen. So we'll say 33%. Okay? And then we're going to do the same kind of thing for the white and the same kind of thing for the blue. So white, we're again going to come in and change our width to percentage, and we'll again make it 33%. And then blue, the order in which you change these properties, of course, does not matter. All right. Now, what I don't like is the way these look, and they're kind of pushed over. Now, I could make each one of them 100%. But the other thing I should be able to do is to highlight all three of these, go over to, where is it? Align horizontal, and choose center. Okay, does that look better? Well, make your own determination as to whether or not it looks better. But I'm showing you a couple things here. All right, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to change this around just a tad. So again, I'm going to come in, and with my screen highlighted, I'm going to change the background color, and let's make it cyan. Okay. All right. Now that we've done all that stuff, let's go to our blocks editor, and we're just like we did before. We're going to come in here, and we're going to drag out our red button. But now we're going to say that when we click that red button, we want to come over to our label, and we want to set the text color of our label, and just like we did before, but now we're working with the text color, we're going to set it to red. We're also going to come in here, and let's duplicate that, and instead of the text color, let's set the text. All right, and I don't want this. I can throw it out in the garbage, and it's gone. And I'm going to come in here where we've got text, and I'm going to set it to blank text. And I'm going to say, this text should be red. Well, it won't be. Yeah, I set the text color to red, and it says this text should be red. Let's see if indeed that worked. So I'm again going to go in and connect, do a reset connection, connect, and go to my emulator. The emulator's coming up. Right now, the white button and the blue button are not functional in that when I click on them, nothing will happen. Ideally, when we click on the red button, we should get that message that says this text is red or whatever it was, and it should be in red. As you can see, the emulator is warming up, so to speak. The emulator can be a little bit hinky. It works a little bit funny at times. Sometimes it'll be working fine, then it'll just kind of stop working. And you'll notice that I've been resetting my connection quite a bit. I found out the more often I do that, typically the less often I have problems. Alright, so when I click the button that says red, what should appear in here is this text should be red. And you see that it is red, and that's what it says. The white button, the blue button right now are not operational. So let's make them operational. Let's right mouse click on here and choose duplicate. And again, you'll notice down here we get a thing that says warnings and errors. And it's showing us no warnings but 2 errors. Well, what is the error? It says this is a duplicate event because I wrote the same code twice. All right. Well, what I want to do is I want to change that to white. I want to change that to white. And I want to change that to white. All right. And then after we've done all this, stuff, I don't know why this always moves like that. I don't like the way that it does that, but whatever. All right. Let's do it one more time. So let's one more time duplicate it. And you can probably guess what's coming. That's going to go to blue. That's going to go to blue. And that is going to go to blue. Oops. B-L-U-E. There we go. So I should be finished right now. Okay, the only thing I'd like to do is I'm going to go back to the designer. And I'm going to go into here. And I'm going to say that I want my text to be bolded. And let's make it a little bigger. So let's make it about 20 points. And just so we see it, let's make the font a serif just so we see we can change it. And let's make our text alignment centered. Also, the pink doesn't really cut it for me. So let's actually make that white. So let's make that background color white. All right. There. All right, so now I'm going to run it again. It's already up here. There's my red. This text should be red. Of course, it says this text should be white. You don't see it. This text should be blue. So I guess that white was not a good color for that, as you can see. So let's change that, and then we'll be finished with this part of the lecture. So I guess I can't make the background exactly white, but is there some light color I can make it? How about light gray? All right. The good news is once the emulator is up and running, I can immediately make my changes. Okay, so you see all that. So what I tried to quickly show you in this particular set, or this particular video, was how we dragged things over from our user interface. All right, I showed you how you can center things. I showed you how you could stretch things across here. Once we dragged in our controls, or our components, all right, from our user interface, we went into the components window, we changed the name for each one, and we also for each one set the properties accordingly. Again, I could come in here if I wanted to and say, well, you know what, I guess I have to do them individually, but I could come into this one here and say I want it bold, this one I want bold, this one I want bold. After a while, you're just tweaking this. Wordsmithing, whatever you want to call it. All right. If I come back to here, what you may or may not have noticed is there's also a thing here that says has margins. and it's put a little bit of margin in there. If I get rid of that, what you'll notice is when I run this, see how there's almost no margin in there now whatsoever. Still works just fine. But basically we've lost our margin, where when I add it again, now we've got a little bit more of a margin. It's kind of hard to tell. All right. So I showed you in here some of the properties, how you can set the background color of components, how you can set bold. If we wanted to, instead of bold, we could also set italic for our label. And you'll notice immediately, as soon as we set these things, you immediately see the result in here. All right. I changed the typeface. I'm not going to worry about HTML format, at least not right now. I showed you that it has margins. I showed you how we can set the height and the width and set the text or remove the text. For the 3 buttons, we set the alignment. We set the text alignment for this. All right. And the only thing we might, for the visible, okay, if I go up to the screen here, which has its own properties, I might want to not have that title visible. And you'll notice that if I do that, now it doesn't have the title here that says AAA. Everything else still works. All right. Then we went over to our blocks editor and we set these 3. So we brought them out. I could have done each one individually, but instead of doing each one individually, what I ended up doing was doing one of them, right mouse clicking and choosing duplicate. Sometimes after you put in too much code too, this is taking up too much of the screen, so I can right mouse click and choose collapse block. And then if I want to, I can expand it again. Okay? So this says again, when we click the red button, set the color of our label's text to red, and set the actual text itself to this text should be red. Same thing with white and with blue. All right. Last thing I want to mention here quickly is if when you're starting to work with these different components, okay, if you don't understand what they do, notice there's a question mark by each one. So if I wanted to know what a list picker was and I clicked here, notice what I get. All right. And all of the components that are in here, they all work like this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and do one more lecture before I go on, or one more video, and I'm going to use this same example that we have here, and I'm going to make some changes to it. All right. So I'll be back with that in just a moment.